How are you doing?
Good. How was your new year?
It's going very good so far.
So far, so good.
I was excited to share that I completed the AI bootcamp with you, which was more than I expected. So thank you for your time and lovely to talk to you today.
Yeah, likewise. Well, thanks for being part of the boot camp. I know it was I think we talked about this in the first session. It's kind of like a risk. There's no testimonials. It's a brand new course, but I'm super grateful to you and everyone else who took the chance and took the course.
For sure. Let's quick start right on the interview. What I would like to know, and for sure, some people who are following you and following me would love to know also, is how did everything start for you? What was your first motivation toward the technology studies, the work that you do? How all this passion sparked?
It probably all started in high school. I was I wasn't an excellent student. I was a very average student. Um, and I was just really doing the bare minimum to get through school. But then, because I wasn't really like necessarily interested in it, like anything particularly, I was pretty good at math and the science courses, but nothing really got me excited until I took a physics class for the first time, and it was just like infinitely interesting to me. So I just kept pulling on that thread and pursuing that curiosity. So I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in physics, and then took some time away from school to work at my dad's car dealership after graduating. But then I felt myself like being pulled toward physics once again. So I was like feeling that curiosity and that itch to learn more and improve my understanding because I had this piece of paper that told me I understood how the universe worked. I understood physics, but I didn't feel like I really understood it. So that's why I went back to grad school to get a master's degree in physics. And then while I was there, I discovered this thing called research, which was this really interesting thing where you were using like new tools and you were answering interesting questions and working on interesting problems. So I tell people I accidentally got a PhD because that wasn't part of the plan. It was just, um, we were having fun doing projects and we were getting funding. So I just stuck around. And so that was really the start of it. And that's been the whole, um, that's been my whole journey essentially, just a journey of discovery and curiosity, pursuing my curiosity and trying to understand the world better, which ultimately led me to data science and machine learning and AI. And the reason being that there are many things in this world that our theories just are not good enough to understand. And we have, we can kind of overcome that ignorance where we don't have like physical theories or laws that have good explanations of the world. We can overcome that limitation through data. And that was a bit of an unlock for me in grad school, kind of seeing how we could use data science and machine learning to kind of fill in the gaps of our ignorance. And then that kind of evolved to the type of AI that we see today with large language models, um, which kind of is a whole different type of machine learning. And I think this trend's only going to increase where um, essentially computers are enabling us to have a better understanding of how the world works and help us kind of in whatever pursuits we try to go after, whether that's, business or academic or just like personal projects or whatever it might be.
So how things moved from physics to computing and developing like software and things like that is your keen curiosity on putting maybe some reality into the theory, and computers and technology nowadays enable us to create things that operate at a high level and that can help humanity, and this is something that really drives you.
It makes what you can do and the problems you can solve, it expands the problem set because if you remember, if you ever took a physics course and remember what it was like, you were typically working with like Newton's laws, and the problems you were solving were very simple systems. And a lot of times, what you do in physics is you have a problem and you make a lot of simplifying assumptions so you can boil it down to the core elements. And then you try to use the physical laws to solve those problems. But at the end of the day, those like simplified versions of the problems aren't the real problem. And you might miss out on some essential elements, some key nuances through making those simplifying assumptions. But with machine learning and data science and AI, you don't necessarily have to make all these simplifying assumptions. You can operate with the full complexity of the world, and answer practical questions and solve practical problems.
Okay, sounds good. And what differentiates you as a data scientist? Because I believe that nowadays it's crowded with many like technical people and who knows a lot of stuff. To be honest, and to give maybe a positive point of view onto what you're doing as more just on this technical side, but also maybe on the learning and teaching and sharing stuff. You're very at ease with what you're teaching, and this is something that speaks to me. But maybe you have a better view on yourself and what you're capable to do. And really, when you look at yourself, like what differentiates you from the others?
I think my number one trait is just a willingness to do hard things and to be uncomfortable. And I think that single skill set is what has allowed me to kind of go after things I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. You know, going to grad school is or I guess like going after a PhD, like no one had to do it. Like I didn't have to do that. And it was very uncomfortable. It was very scary. Like this idea of writing a dissertation and doing a defense and writing papers and putting yourself out there like that. Putting myself out there on YouTube by showing my face and recording videos, writing blog posts, putting and eventually like starting on LinkedIn and other places. And then like leaving my full-time job to become a full-time entrepreneur, that was also very scary and uncomfortable. But just the more you do it, the more like you develop that skill set. You develop that habit of going after discomfort, going after, you know, um, going after these things because that's where growth happens. That's where growth and development happens. You don't grow when you're comfortable. You grow when you are uncomfortable. And the more uncomfortable you are, the more that you're growing. So that's just like a central thesis in my life and how I approach things.
And what has really challenged you through the course of what you have been through? Because if we set very high goals and the execution needs to be on point as well, sometimes it's not that perfect, although we just see the tip of the iceberg and results. But what really challenged you the most? And looking back, how did you overcome this and became better?
Yeah, I feel like, especially now with New Year's, people they'll set too big of goals for themselves. And then once they kind of don't hit some unrealistic expectation, they get unmotivated and kind of crash out. Um, I always take, for me, everything's just like habit. You know what I mean? So I kind of set my sight on something and then I ask myself, okay, like what can I do every single day or every single week to help me move toward toward that goal. So just taking things one step at a time and really taking this mindset of make today better than yesterday. And I think that's helped me tremendously because even if you fail one day, some people might get unmotivated, but actually, that's a great situation because if you fail today, that just means you're going to make tomorrow easier because tomorrow you're going to be like, oh, I just have to make today better than yesterday. And yesterday was terrible. So that's actually pretty easy. And then you kind of eventually get back on track and get toward your goals. But like, I guess there have been so many challenges since leaving my job. Um, and I don't know if there's like a singular one that jumps to mind, uh, but overall, it's like this um, operating in a space where there's no net, you know? It's like it's all on you, and if you don't show up and do the work, then you're like no one's gonna yell at you, no one's gonna get mad at you, but you might run out of money next month or something like that. So it's just like learning to navigate and stay productive in that environment and actually like learning how to use that as fuel to stay productive and actually be more effective than in another situation where you don't have that pressure.
Yeah. Um, I read many times that entrepreneurs and very top CEOs like Steve Jobs or Tim Cook, I don't recall one of them, says that he doesn't care about the numbers in 90 days, so the quarterly statements.
Right.
He looks at the bigger picture. When you start as an entrepreneur, unfortunately or fortunately, you have to make a living out of it. And at
Right.
first, this is not something easy. It's not like a salary that money pops into your bank account every single month. And you have written something very interesting in your LinkedIn post. You said that you're not going to talk about, I think, revenue, because this is not something you control.
Right.
You only control what you put into action.
Right.
So when you look at this kind of frame, how do you situate yourself financially? And do you have any advice on for this?
So I just had to find what worked. At the beginning of the journey, I kind of like left my job with a very vague plan. It was make as much content as possible and try to support myself with AI consulting. And then that kind of like crashed and burned and didn't go as expected. So it was just a matter of like trying so many different things. Like I tried, paid calls, I tried doing project-based work, I tried being a project manager and just hiring help. I tried being just doing my main source of revenue as being content. I tried doing private workshops for companies. I tried doing like other versions of the AI Builders Bootcamp. And this was like the fifth iteration that finally worked. So I tried like so many different things. Um, because I was very ignorant. Like I didn't know what would work. So I just had to try a lot of things. And then once you learn that, then you can make a better assessment of like, okay, what actions should I do? What inputs should I focus on to be able to achieve my goals? And of course, like, some people like their main motivation is money and they're trying to maximize that number. And I guess there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Um, but like for me, I'm trying to like maximize like how much I'm learning, my growth, and just like my autonomy. Because I don't want people telling me what to do. Like I want to have full autonomy and agency over the things that I pursue and the things that I spend my time on. But there's a reality that you have to make money to pay your bills. So every entrepreneur has to face that reality and balance that with the other objectives, with the impact that they're trying to make. And so it just took a lot of iterations until so I make some money from like content creation alone, but if you want to be a full-time content creator, the way you make money is through sponsorships and brand deals. And I don't enjoy doing sponsorships and brand deals. And part of the reason is that it kind of limits my freedom and my autonomy. So it doesn't jive with that bigger goal that I have. And then consulting was a similar kind of thing because I don't have control or autonomy over the problems that I solve and the projects that I build. I basically have to solve the client's problem. I can't solve whatever problem I like.
Mm.
So there was tension there as well. But then with the boot camp, like the educational offers, I can teach whatever I want. If people don't like it, they won't take the course. If they like it, then it's good. And I guess I'm lucky in that, the things that I was curious about and learned about and made content about is things that other people are also curious about. And it's also providing value to them. So you just trying to find that alignment, like the things that kind of work for you, they are aligned with your objectives and your skill set and the things that people are willing to pay for or that provides value for them.
Okay. Do you think that at some point you're gonna be comfortable, or are you feeling that the more that you advance, the less pressure you feel? Because, as you said at first, maybe you hustle more and you try
Right.
different things. do you think that at some point you have to settle into something and make them bigger, like the bootcamp stuff? Or
Yeah, it just depends on your goals. And of course, like this can turn into a treadmill where, people make, their dream is to make 10K a month and then they make 10K a month and they're like, oh, actually now I want to make like 20K a month and they make 20K and then they're like, okay, actually I want to make 50K a month and they make 50K and then 100K and then it just becomes like this hamster wheel. It's like a never-ending treadmill. Um, and, if you're not careful, like, that can happen, like, you can just, like, start to focus on the wrong thing, and you just optimize the wrong thing and lose sight of, like, why you did this whole thing in the first place. And so for me right now, the goal is to get the boot camp to a place where it's basically on cruise control. So I'm basically thinking of it as, like, being a part-time lecturer at a company, or at a university, but instead of a university, it's, like, my own course that I put on. And then like I can focus my most of my time on content creation and product development. And actually, all these things are kind of like connected to each other because I can, um, you know, make content about my products as a way to promote it, but also to kind of provide value to people to show people how I do it and like my whole process. And then I can also get feedback from the content to improve the product or to come up with other product ideas. And then, there's like that natural synergy there.
perfect.
So that's the vision right now.
You jumped into my next question, so it's very nice that this is happening. What project are you working on or developing right now
So
that are exciting you, of course?
right. So the approach I'm taking is to just ship something every month. And that can mean like a lot of different things. So in October, I shipped a product called Y to B, which converts YouTube videos to blog posts. In November, I shipped the boot camp. This month, or December, I shipped a newsletter. And so now I'm looking toward January, February, March, and I just take it like 1 month at a time. So I don't like map it out like that. Like I haven't even like finalized what I'm going to ship in January, but right now what I'm thinking is to ship some new features to Y2B, the product I shipped in October. Just launch some new features to make it a bit more valuable and try to make my first dollar like through my product with these new features. So that's what I'm thinking about in January. But there's no shortage of ideas uh, with like products. But I'll say like I guess the two things that I'm like I, my approach is like there are two key parts to it. The first part is to solve my own problems, because even if the product fails, like I can use it and save myself time, and that's exactly what happened with Y2B. Yeah, I haven't made my first dollar from it, but I've been using it and so I think one of my blog posts has made like, I don't know, maybe like $100 that I wrote with it on Medium. So I guess I made money indirectly with it. And also I have a podcast with a community I run called the Data Entrepreneurs. And every time we post one of the podcast interviews, I'll make a blog post out of it using Y2B. And then anytime someone comes on and gives a technical workshop in the community, I'll give them free credit so they can use Y2B and generate blogs for the data entrepreneurs blog that we have on Medium. So, even though I haven't made like money directly from it, I've been able to extract value from it, and that comes from solving my own problems. I think another big benefit of solving your own problems is you are your own customer, so you can iterate faster. You don't have to go do customer interviews. Like you have a sense of what is helpful, what provides value, what doesn't provide value, and you can better improve the product. The second approach, I guess the second piece of my approach is the way I think about product development right now is that there are three key parts to it. The first part is like idea generation and validation. The second part is implementation, so like writing the code and building the thing. And then the final part is sales and marketing. And so, kind of under this solve your own problems, like thinking about problems within these three buckets and solving problems within that. So, a lot of times, people, we might think that constraints are a bad thing and might limit our creativity, but it's often the exact opposite. Like constraints actually unlock creativity and allow you to kind of be free because otherwise you're just like overwhelmed. It's kind of like looking at a blank page and you get writer's block because you don't even know where to start. But if you already have like a template and there's some like guardrails, it's easier to get started and sparks your creativity even more. So those are kind of like the guardrails that I'm using right now and for my product development. Um, and yeah, I guess one last thing I'll say on like said like an example of like setting these constraints is in Q4. So what would that be? October of 2024. I kind of shifted my content creation strategy to focus on like learning and building. So like basically I wanted every YouTube title or blog title to have the word learn in it or build in it. I mean, it's not like exactly that, but just focusing all the content on that, and I feel like that like sparked a ton of ideas for me. It like unlocked my creativity as opposed to inhibiting it.
Perfect. Well, I keep in mind that we might end up in the blog thanks to your software.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we earned that. What do you think that businesses right now should focus on to leverage AI into their operations or to generate more revenue? As you have experience with the different brands and the different consulting work, what do you see right now that can be a really fundamental step toward achieving
Yeah.
yeah, big goals?
So I think the biggest mistake I see people make is that they don't focus on solving problems. The conversation usually starts something like, "Oh, how can we use Gen AI, you know, like we should use Gen AI or we should use AI." That's how the conversation starts, as opposed to starting from a problem that they need to solve or improving an existing workflow or something like that. And I think that like what usually happens when you start with like the technology is you end up just building a lot of things and spending a lot of time and money on things that don't work out. And I think there's definitely a place for that. You know, like when I'm reading Benjamin Franklin's, um, or I'm reading a biography of Benjamin Franklin right now. And when electricity first came out, they were trying to figure out, okay, he was trying to figure out what practical uses can I get of this. And he tried like, dozens of things. Most of them were not practical, but he was taking like this small scale approach. He was just like experimenting and tinkering until he found some practical use cases. I think one was like, killing a turkey, creating light, electrifying a fence, doing light shows. Like, so he found like a bunch of different uses of electricity. And it's a similar thing now with AI. If you're taking this like low stakes tinkering approach, like you're just experimenting and trying little things and trying to see what signals come up, like that's a good approach. But when you're talking about an enterprise or a business, like there might be a tendency to take that same approach, but add like hundreds of thousands of dollars to it. And if you're paying employees, if you're paying engineers to do this tinkering, you're essentially spending hundreds of $1,000s to tinker. So I think just being cognizant of that, like being aware that you can take this experimental approach if you want to start with the technology, but it's not going to work out like maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 projects are going to end up providing any value. But if you start with like the problem and improving existing workflows or kind of fundamentally changing existing workflows that you already know, like are fundamental to your business, like provide value to the business, then you're going to increase the probability of success much more because you're starting with a existing pain point as opposed to like trying to go find a pain point.
I see what you mean. And looking at maybe this year, have you noticed a pattern in problem solving for companies, or this is like very average and very random? So some companies focus on maybe helping, I don't know, sales people or marketing,
Right.
content, etc. Do you see some pattern, or is very random?
Yeah, so I guess I'm limited to the types of people that reach out to me, which are typically small to medium-sized businesses. whether it's just like a single person or a few dozen people or a few hundred people at the company. Um, and my audience is pretty like diverse. It's not like any specific industry. So it's hard to say like what trends are emerging because like the data points are quite sparse.
Yes.
But I will say like um, I guess one thing I'm seeing is that people are um, I guess they're more open to the development. Like people who are not technical at all are like building these prototypes, which is really exciting to see. So I think like this experimentation is good for the whole. Um, it's just important for people to realize if they're taking this like technology first approach, like knowing that, you got to probably do 10 projects until something works out and to make sure that the investment makes sense for that. Um, and then if you're taking this problem first approach, like, you have a better chance of actually providing value.
Okay, and for these people who maybe don't have very deep technical knowledge that you're helping, do you see any practical way they can start integrating AI themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now it's never been easier. And, just yesterday or a couple days ago, I was on a call with this guy. He is an industrial engineer or some kind of inspector or something, a very niche industry that I've never heard about. But like, this is a whole profession. Like, there are regulations. There are huge teams of these guys at companies, and he built a tool specifically to help inspectors write a specific type of report. And he had gone pretty far without any coding, like using no code solutions and just using like making a custom GPT first, and then using this no code tool to create the back end and the front end all in just to make like a working web app. And I think those like you're going to see innovations from both sides. You're going to see innovation from technical people, and you're also going to see innovation from non-technical people who have this like very specific domain that they're trying to solve a problem in. And I actually will put my money on the latter because they're starting with like they have the valuable insight, which is the problem, while the technical insight isn't as valuable, especially at the early stage when you're trying to in that first part of product development, you're trying to like come up with ideas and validate them. It's much more important to have insight into the problems as opposed to the technology, because it doesn't matter how like great of a coder you are. If you're solving the wrong problem, it's not going to provide value to anyone. So really the beginning of these projects should be very much focused on solving problems, validating the solutions to these problems, building them fast, keeping them very simple, and trying to iterate on them as fast as possible. Um, and really trying to invalidate ideas more than validate ideas, just trying to prove yourself wrong, because it's easy to get excited about a solution that you come up with that you kind of don't have a objective perspective on the information that you're receiving about it.
I think many people and many companies will relate to that for 100% sure. As AI landscape is developing into more like more developed things, it's going very quick. What's your take on the next 5 to 10 years? Like how data engineering and AI is moving towards? Do you have any insight to that?
I think we'll still see, there's always going to be Um, we're going to still see a need for data engineers. We're going to still see a need for data scientists and ML engineers, and then people who understand how large language models work. Like I only feel like the pie is going to expand. Um, but then, yeah, so there's that aspect to it. So I think we'll keep these roles. I don't know if any of those roles will be replaced anytime soon. Maybe they'll mean slightly different things in the next 5 years. Um, but if you're looking at the trajectory of AI over the past, like, I guess 75 years, And we talked about this in the course. We had software 1.0, which is just like rules-based systems, just explicitly telling the computer what to do. Software 2.0 was instead of writing explicit instructions, you give the computer a bunch of examples to learn from, to learn how to solve the problem or do the particular task. And that's called machine learning. And then now we have this different kind of AI where, huge labs will train these foundation models, and then we can build on top of these foundation models with just like simple prompt engineering and some other things to adapt them to our specific use case. So while these might sound like very different ways of approaching software development, there is a single thread that I see kind of running through all of them, which is that the instructions that we need to give computers in order for them to be helpful for us are getting fuzzier and fuzzier. Like if you have to write a Python script to do something, like you have to be very specific about the steps. If you want to train a model to do something, you don't have to necessarily know all the steps. You just need to be able to curate examples. Um, if you want to get an LLM to do something, you could just write a natural language prompt and just basically ask it to do it like you were talking to a person. So you don't even need to know anything about, you don't even need to know what it looks like to solve the problem. You can just like ask it to do it and it'll do it for you. So I feel like this trend will continue. Like the instructions that we need to give computers will only get fuzzier and fuzzier until the point it can be like, hey, start me a podcast, or hey, make clips from, like, here's my YouTube channel, go make a new clips page for it and edit short form content and all this kind of stuff. So you can just give it like really high level abstract instructions, and it can kind of like go off and like do the task or solve the problems for you. And we're already seeing like early signs of that with O1 and O3 and these models that can prompt themselves essentially and kind of breaks break break these high level tasks down to step by step instructions and then kind of iteratively prompting themselves to solve each step of that process.
Yeah. For the purists, the most purist developers and technical people, will they miss the old days of struggles and being very keen into the instruction, as you said, like with writing scripts? Or you believe that now that they have maybe some powerful tools, it's gonna help them out, and at the end they're gonna be grateful to that? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think the like technologists, like people who love building stuff, they're only gonna be happy that there's more tools. Maybe they'll like sneer at seeing people building these like, hacky prototypes with like pretty high level no code tools. Um, but I think people are just optimizing for different things. Like people who love the technical side, they just love the beauty and the art that it goes into building. They love the process of building, while there's the other camp, they're just trying to like generate value and solve problems, and they're not necessarily the same thing. I guess the beauty comes when like both of those things align, and then you get like great products, kind of like with Apple, where they have these um, you know products that people really want, but they're also like beautifully designed and engineered.
Okay, one of the last questions, so I don't take up too much of your time, would be what would you advise for people who are getting new, or maybe even like they have like knowledge about this domain and expertise, to stay maybe up to date? Because staying ahead, I think it's very much complicated with the fast-pacing environment. Do you have any advice for these people?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a good. I don't think it's helpful to like try to stay up with trends and the latest and greatest technologies because most of that is noise. And then you'll end up just learning like a lot of things that you're gonna have to forget or you're gonna end up forget and not get much value from anyway. The approach I've always taken is to like go after my curiosity. So if I come across something that sounds interesting to me, I'll just, go after and try to like watch a YouTube video about it or read a paper about it or read a blog post about it. And then you know if I want to take it one step further, I'll like go build something. I'll go try to build a little project about it. And if I want to go even further, I'll write my own blog post about it or record my own YouTube video or like put a talk together and explain it to people. If I'm working at a company, like put a short slide deck together and like invite colleagues to come hear me talk about this and teach it to them. So I feel like there are many levels, and of course, you're not gonna like give lectures about everything that you learn about. Um, but I guess just staying like keeping it fun and playful. Just like not getting so serious and um, about it, just like going after things that are interesting. And yeah, you'll get frustrated. Yeah, like it's going to be hard because learning is inherently hard. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like one of those things that it might be hard to get into, but you feel better afterward.
Yeah,
It's like going to the gym. Like no one wants to wake up early, go to the gym, but everyone who is leaving the gym in the morning, they're like happy and
yeah.
that you feel better. So, you know, just kind of know that going into it. Um, and I think if you do it enough, you build the habits, you're going to be better off in the long run.
Perfect. My last question would be, with some people who are more conservative about AI. I had a talk last year when the AI generative with ChatGPT 3.5 became very viral.
Mhm.
And in Europe and France, they are kind of conservative towards that,
Okay.
like US. Um, what would you think in terms of privacy and maybe some topics that can be sensitive, sensible? Uh, like how can we protect or maybe um, make other people like regulatory government, not government, but agencies more convinced, more confident towards what's happening right now? Do you have any take on this?
Yeah, I guess it's not something I've thought much about. But how this technology is regulated is going to become important because it's a very powerful technology. And I guess anything with great power will come with like great abuse, because that's just human nature. There's always going to be a subpopulation of people who are going to try to use tools and technologies to exploit other people. And that's just like a reality of humanity. So we will there will be a need, and there is a need for agencies to have some kind of regulation and guardrails around it. But it's not something that I've really thought much about, thought of a lot, or something I have a lot of knowledge about either.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for your time, Shaw. I will make this video available as soon as possible so people with your community in mind can read through it and learn a lot from your wisdom and experience. I would invite everybody who's gonna listen to this to follow Shaw Talebi in LinkedIn and also YouTube. I will put a link into my videos and hopefully see you again next time.
Yeah, sounds good. Are you in cohort two?
I haven't gotten an invite, but if you send me that, maybe I can look through it.
Yeah, I mean, let me know. Yeah, I offered a free placement to cohort two for cohort one people. So if you're interested, just let me know and I can add you in there.
Very nice. Okay, I will look to the dates that you have. I'll text you, and definitely could be very
All
interesting.
right. Sounds
Thanks
good. All right, Ali. This
for
was
the
fun.
conversation.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
Have a good one.